which has a connection with her family. So I think at 6 o'clock, I just wanted to highlight the fact that we do accept comments during public forum, and he has those orange colored sheets that are on the back table. So if you're interested in speaking to the board during public forum, please fill one of those out and just ask your name and address and give those to Jody McCoy, the district secretary, and she will get them to me and we will invite you up to speak. I will call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Bennington Board of Education, February 13th. The laws of Nebraska regarding open meetings apply in this meeting, and the poster of which is presented in the back wall, which dictates what those rules are. So I think we'll start with public forum. We have a busy agenda tonight. We're going to have an agenda item at the end with the Nebraska Association of School Boards. We're going to do our second work session, so we're combining meetings this evening. So hopefully you'll all stay for that piece as well. We're going to start with Nicole Harris. Just stop right first again. First out of the gate. If you can try to keep your comments to about 5 minutes a person, that would be great. So I'll try to wave you down when we get those.
A couple of handouts for the board. Just as reference as I quote some bylaws.
Thank you.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
So good evening. My name is Nicole Harris. I'm a resident of the Bennington community and I reside in the Newport Landing subdivision. My address is 11770 North 175th Circle. My children attend Bennington Middle School and Bennington Elementary School. I first want to extend my appreciation to each of you for volunteering to serve as board members and for providing governance and oversight of our children's education, which represent our community's values, views, and shared desires as our district continues to grow. I last spoke to you on January 20th, where I asked for this board to familiarize yourself with the staffing crisis our girls' athletics department is facing within the wrestling program, and I advised you that I would return today to address this subject with more detail on the tournament safety liabilities and the lack of technical, tactical, and physical development our girls' wrestling team is undergoing due to this coaching staff shortage. Ironically enough, it was during my last appearance here that one of our female athletes was injured at a tournament and had to be rushed to the hospital. If her parents hadn't have been on scene, the girls' wrestling team would have had to forfeit the remainder of the tournament so that the coach could escort the wrestler by ambulance. Tonight, I'm taking the opportunity to speak to you in an effort to elevate this conversation and the need for an additional assistant coach on payroll for the girls' high school wrestling team so that you are prepared to act on the hiring proposal submitted for your approval next month. I've provided each of you with a packet this evening that contains the NSAA Constitution and bylaws that pertain to the schools and the coaching staff's responsibilities. Outlined in section 2.12, it states, when a team or individuals from the school compete in an inter-school competition, the team or the individuals must be accompanied and supervised by the head coach or assistant coach. I have also attached the Bennington Public Schools volunteer coaching criteria and process. Referring to line 8, it says, volunteer coaches are not allowed to operate independently. They must be working with or under the supervision of a paid staff member at all times. The guidance is here. It's in black and white for you. But yet our female wrestlers have only one assistant coach and oftentimes do not have a coach present with them on the mat during competitions. It is impossible for one coach to be present for each of the Bennington wrestlers when matches are often taking place in separate gyms or when two Bennington athletes are called up to duel at the same time as one another. The scheduling of events for the girls' team is also affected differently than our boys' team. Having only one assistant coach on payroll for them, the girls' team misses opportunities for quality events that are offered to the boys' team. And while most of the boys' events are on the weekends, The girls' events must be scheduled on weekdays, resulting in the girls missing school. And then there's the safety concern. When our athletes are injured, who stays with them and who stays with the team? Who goes to the emergency room with the injured wrestler? We have 7 rostered varsity girls at the high school and 8 new girls that have joined the middle school team this year. I'm asking this board to take all of this into consideration and to approve the additional coaching staff proposal so that our district can continue to grow this sport and so that our daughters can participate in a safer and equal opportunity environment. Thank you for your attention, your time, and your service to the Badger community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
All right, next up is Shannon Teacher. Welcome, thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Shannon Peacher. I live at 16118 Cherry Circle here in Bennington. I have 2 student athletes at the Bennington High School. My daughter's a sophomore and my son is a junior. First, I want to thank you for your important contribution of time and energy serving as board members of the Bennington Public Schools. The board exists in part because individuals volunteer their time to make informed decisions about the issues facing our public schools, and for that, I would like to thank you each. I realize each of you are volunteers who give your time, energy, and counsel to the district without pay, making the best decisions you can for our students, teachers, and administration, with the full understanding you will receive only the satisfaction of your contribution in return. You do so because you care. You care about our schools being the best that they can be and about the next generation and the future of our community. Know you have and continue to make a difference in their lives. I am grateful you recognize a responsibility that extends outside the education of what our students receive between the hours of 8 and 3:15. You have the ability to provide the opportunities for students to reach their full potential, both academically and athletically. I am so grateful for the enthusiasm and dedication you have already shown in researching the need most recently brought forth to you on January 20th, and again today by Nicole Harris, as it pertains to the growth of the girls wrestling program at the high school level, and potentially the middle school, and the staff needed to accommodate such planned growth, ensuring the safety of our athletes. Thank you again for considering the proposal to add an additional coach for the girls wrestling program at the high school. I know it is not an easy decision to make, and I'm confident the board will do due diligence in reviewing our concerns to make the best decisions for the athletes in the program. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions or concerns regarding my proposal.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you. All right, next up we have 2 individuals, and I think these are both students, so I know the board is actually appreciative of those folks that want to come and speak to us. I know it's challenging in front of the board. So Macy Beecher and Kiana Wingender. Did I say that correctly? There's 2 seats, yes, we'll sit together. Thank you both for coming.
Hi, my name is Kiana Winder. I am a junior at Bennington High School. I live in Birchville, 459 Sunrise Street. This is my first year on the wrestling team, and along with my teammate, Macy Peacher, I too will be wrestling for a state title this weekend. You heard me right, this is my first year on wrestling, full year of wrestling. I've had the privilege of representing our school this year, which I'm super excited about. Because of the great work you have already done in the prior term, I get the opportunity to do this, which means the most to me. I'm here today to thank you for your past decision and also take you for some time to consider increasing our coaching staff, which would allow for growth. And not only that, but will provide opportunities for young girls like me who would want to give this a try. I would not be here today without my coaches, so thank you. I'm Macy Peter. I'm a sophomore at Bennington High School and a member of the girls varsity wrestling team. This weekend, I hope to secure my second state title as I've set out on a mission to be the Nebraska's first four-timer. As you may or may not know, I was also rewarded the honor to represent Bennington High School last year as the very first female wrestling state champion in Nebraska history. I just wanted to say thank you for your time. And I live at 16118 Cherry Circle, Bennington, Nebraska.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Good job, ladies.
Good luck and state.
All right, next up is Carol Dussel-Sermon. If anyone came in late and would like to speak, the orange sheets are in the back. Please, we still have time to speak.
It's too loud. I don't remember which meeting, but there's been discussions for the superintendent paying out sick pay. And so I was just kind of curious. So I did some, I'll say, research. And I found out that I looked at I wondered how do we pay out that to staff? Well, teachers get paid out at 40% of the substitute rate. Not 100%, like the superintendent, and so does our cooks, our secretaries, all the other staff. They get paid out at a percentage after 5 years. So that kind of surprised me because that's kind of a big disparity. And I've heard discussion of retention and stuff, and so I think, I don't know, I just would have guessed that that would be closer to the same. I keep coming to the meetings to see what I can learn. I don't think I've missed a meeting since July. I've been told if you want to get involved, you need to come because no one's going to ask you. If you want to be involved, you have to be here and put your name in the hat. Well, I put my name in the hat a couple months ago. I don't remember the exact meeting, and well, that doesn't exactly always happen. If you put your name in the hat, you may not also get to be involved. So I got that email today at 4:50. Just a little bit disappointed would be an understatement. Because if you want to be involved, you can't necessarily do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Carol. Does anyone else wish to speak in public forum this evening? Thank you. All right, then we will get to the next order of business this evening, and that would be the consent agenda. This item typically involves approving the agenda, minutes, bills for payment, and personnel resignations and hirings. Is there a motion, and then we can have discussion? I don't know. I know Jeremy, you had bill review. I don't know who else had bill review. Okay, Jeremy and Tim had bill review, so we'll do that during discussion. So first we need a motion, and then we'll do discussion.
I so move to approve the following consent agenda items for presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, is there any discussion on the items? Jeremy, Tim, do you guys have anything of note on the bills this month?
Nothing to speak of.
Okay. Any other questions from board members on that?
No.
Questions? I know there were several rounds of minutes because we've had multiple meetings. I hope everybody had a chance to review those. I did. Thank you, Jody, for capturing all those accurately. Did anybody else have changes on the minutes? Okay. Jody, you want to call the roll?
Christie?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
And we did get feedback from Mr. Uckman that they're having trouble hearing us remotely. So if you can, and you have a stand-up mic, pull it close when you speak so that everybody can hear what you have to say. All right, then I think we can go ahead with the administrative reports. And we'll start with the elementary board reports. Is that Mrs. Lefko this evening? Welcome with Heritage. Thank you for coming.
Katie Lefko, principal at Heritage Elementary. We've had a really great start to the second semester in all of our elementary buildings, and we're getting ready to welcome families over the next 2 evenings for our parent-teacher conferences. But the one thing I'd really like to highlight for our buildings this month is Kindness Week. So all of our buildings have or will be celebrating Kindness Week with our students, so they've had opportunities to talk about kindness as well as share random acts of kindness throughout our buildings and then also beyond our building walls. Are there any questions?
I appreciated the 100 day of school pics. I know that's a highlight for the students and families, so thank you for sharing that as well. Anyone else on the board have questions for Mrs. Lefko? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, the middle school. Mr. Hoppus?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sean Hoppus. I'm the Bennington South Middle School principal. Also like the elementary, we're off to a really good start this semester. The sports are rolling right along with girls basketball and wrestling. We actually had signups today for track to see what our interest was there. So we have over, I think, 125 kids signed up right now for track. So that's exciting to think about. A couple highlights for us. Aisha Macasay, this is her second year in a row of winning the regional spelling bee, which is a pretty big deal. So she's going to participate March 18th to take that next step. So we're rooting her on, and she is very focused on taking that next step. And then 2 Bennington Middle School students were honored for some art in the Nebraska State Scholastic Art Region. So they'll be honored March 4th. So some really good stuff happening there. So any questions for me? All right, thank you guys.
Yep, thank you.
High school report. Lamberty?
Good evening, everyone. Greg Lamberty, Bennington High School Principal. Just kind of a summary of what's going on between now and our next meeting. Our counseling department has started to register kids for the next school year. So we've currently met with the 8th graders and our sophomores, and we will continue that over the next 3 weeks with our current juniors and freshmen. And then we have 2 dates planned on the 6th and 7th of March, where we will invite families up, have a freshman orientation, kind of explain that information to families to get them going for the next school year. Parent-teacher conference is next week. And then as you heard from our student athletes, it's state time for the winter sports. We've got state wrestling. We'll roll into the basketballs. And then we have the overlap starting on the 27th with spring sports. So awful lot going on in the high school. Questions for me?
Thanks, Ben. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Mrs. Began?
Hi, Whitney Fagan, Director of Student Services. So I'm going to start off with sprinkling the happiness. We've had unified basketballs, you'll see right there. We had a tournament a couple weeks ago and did really well on that, and then we went to Fort Calhoun and played on Thursday night, this past Thursday night, and they had a full gym, and it was a really neat experience. And if you guys want to feel the happiness, March 1st, we have an early out, and at 12 p.m. we have Papillion High School coming to us, and we're going to compete against them. So we hope to have a full house for that. And then my next page, just an update on our EL program. So we are at 52 active students and 42 on monitor status, which is 94 in total. And 6 years ago when I came here, we had 19 students. So we just increased that tremendously, and just some neat facts kind of about that program. Any questions?
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Hovey?
Good evening, Dee Hovey, Assistant Superintendent. I bring to you tonight a report that circles around assessment and the interventions that we're offering our students. Dr. Hawk, just scroll down to the colored table for me. Lots of information by building of how we support students. This gives you a total number of students that we're serving by grade level in our elementaries. IRIB is the Individual Reading Improvement Act plan that we write for each student who is not on grade level. And so that is monitored by the classroom teacher. Those students may also get assistance from the reading teachers and math specialists in our district. So you'll see the number of students by grade that are receiving additional instruction in reading from our reading specialist or in math from our math specialist. These students have multiple data points that they have to qualify for those services through. So overall, at the bottom of this, you will see the numbers of students that we are serving at the current time for the second semester, and these could be duplicates across those. The last page gives you the information about our middle schools. The Reading Improvement Act has been around long enough now that we have a handful of sixth graders that we are still supporting as they move into middle school. And so you'll only see the IRIBs for sixth grade. That'll roll up to seventh grade if students aren't on grade level by the end of the year as well, and then another year down the road to eighth grade. But you'll see the totals there of the number of students that are getting extra support. And in the middle school, with our middle school philosophy, intervention is built into their school day. And so rather than trying to get kids to stay after school or come early or on the weekends, this is built into their daily schedule, that we can give them extra help. Usually it's 2 days a week for reading, 2 days a week for math. And so we're doing our best to get kids on grade level so that they're ready to achieve as they move along. So any questions I can answer for you about our intervention program. Our spotlight tonight is on the high school intervention and our MTSS program. So you'll hear more about the high school later in the meeting.
So Dr. Hoagie, we've had the IRIS now for several years. Do you think that's assisted us in identifying students earlier, or what's your assessment of how well the program is serving its purpose?
I would say overall, it does highlight some students. It's very hard that we have to give assessments in the first 30 days of school. So especially with kindergarten students this is their first chance for a lot of kids to go to school. They may have never seen a standardized test before in their life. And in the first 30 days of school, we're deciding are you on target or not on target. So the way that the law is written is not the best for our youngest students, but very quickly, our teachers get them up to speed and where they need to be. So overall, I feel it's worked very well. It is an extra layer of work for classroom teachers, but it does so much for the kids to have that extra layer of time built in. Teachers commit to an extra 30 minutes a week for students before the reading specialists would see them. So we've layered about 2 hours of reading per day on kids with that. So they really are getting what they need. So it's good. It's not perfect, but it's good for kids.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have questions for Dr. Hoagie?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, how are kids exited from the program? Is it a test-based or how is that done?
It is test-based. For IRIPS, it's written into the state law that it is one test, one score. We have, in Bennington, we set our standards that the kids have to hit that mark twice. It's too easy for kids to maybe have a great day or guess really well today. And so we really look for that consistency. So we have them hit the mark twice unless we have multiple other data points that would support saying it's okay to back off and give them their wings to fly. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
And I have a question too. So this program here, the way I'm reading through this, would this catch individuals with, let's say, dyslexia, things like
It
that?
could, absolutely.
It could also miss them though.
It could also miss them, yes.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Hawk, you want to give us your superintendent's report?
Yes, with the help of Dr. Bloomkamp, we have a report. This is different than last year in that we hired approximately 80. We had about 90 interviews at the time, so we are considerably less. We had about 30 interviews. We have 4 approval, which has already been approved, certificated staff. We still have openings in support staff. As you can see, about 15 to 16 that are currently in budget but not hired because we do not have the applications. I have been honored to be, and a request to be a part of the chaperones for the Washington DC trip with the 5th graders this year. I think I've been on the waiting list for 10 years and I finally got to be approved for that. And so excited to be a part of that. And a little bit about Safe to Health. Safe to Help has been around for quite some time, 3 to 4 years. It was started in Douglas County only and has branched out with a bill to the state of Nebraska. It is a very important tool for Bennington Public Schools as well as everywhere else. Just a few numbers. You can see that the high school has 47, middle school 44, and the elementary 2. The most common is the bullying, cyberbullying, followed by drugs and harassment. There's, I think, over or close to 50 different categories that they categorize those calls into. But Safe to Help is a very important tool for us. That is the highlights of my report.
And if you have walking shoes, I went last year. His DC trip is extensive.
I look forward to it.
Gerald will tell you.
I've been there. I've also been under the thumb of Abby, yeah. So, not to mention names, but Ms. Fitzgerald will probably keep me under thumb.
Very good. You'll be on our bus. All right, next would be committee reports. I don't know that we have any this evening. The Building and Finance Committee has met regarding certificated staff negotiations, and we'll go into executive session later regarding that item. The Policy Committee was going to meet, and then with the superintendent search, we stole the time slot of the Policy Committee, so we'll try to find a time for next month and get that. We just had so many meetings trying to be respectful of folks' time as well, so we will ramp that up as soon as we have more availability. The Curriculum Committee, I know, is planning on meeting here shortly. We have a bunch of proposals that are still waiting. Do we want to try to set a date now, or do you want to do that after the meeting?
I think we'll send out an email
Okay.
and see if we can get some dates for that.
All right, looks like we have an operations update. Mr. Eden's here.
Yes.
Good evening, Jeremy Edens, Coordinator of Facilities and Transportation. So here for our annual February update, kind of summer project plans. We've kind of already started writing some down and getting with the maintenance guys at each building and finding out what needs to be done and can be done over the summer. Then we'll cover staffing expectations and the facility equipment life expectancy sheet. So for our summer plan, we are going to remodel the old wrestling room into a training room and classroom, and the old training room converted to a referee dressing room with a shower. We will obtain bids for electrical, plumbing, and carpentry from the community. We will not have a GC. Dr. Blumenkamp and I will be supervising the work. The auxiliary gym floor will be replaced and covered by the district's insurance policy. This work is planned to begin in April and wrap up in approximately 6 weeks. And then, as with every year, we do submit a request for feedback from the staff members to give us any kind of work orders for their classrooms that need to happen over the summer. Summer staffing, we're going to go down to 5 grounds crew for mowing and other projects this year. This is a reduction of 1 from last year because we're not moving into 2 new schools. So the paint crew, still going to go with 2 members there. It seems like we don't have enough time as it is. So facility life expectancy, this is a worksheet that you should have received. We also have a copy of it for the presentation. Just some areas of concern is going to be like roofing sections. So Bennington High School, the first edition roof is getting up there. It's probably ready to be replaced. So be cognizant to plan for that in the future. So another thing that was unique this year, we hired 4 new maintenance staff members this year to work for us. Usually we don't have very many openings in that, so that was a lot to juggle. And then we're also working with our maintenance staff to work on some training, some customer service training, approachability, and follow through. So we're taking good care of our staff members.
I'm going to go back to the
Facility? Yeah.
okay.
So areas of concern are going to be in red. Yellow's kind of caution, green means we're good. So the areas of concern for me, like I said, is the high school roof and then also the Pine Creek roof. Even though it has 7 years of life expectancy left, it's probably it reaches end of life a little sooner than that. It's having a lot of leaks. There's a couple of areas of concern. So Windows at Bennington Elementary, getting close to needing replacements on all of them. They're starting to kind of run out or just kind of fall apart. And then another area that we should be aware of, at the high school, the HVAC system in the first edition is nearing its end of life. And here at Bennington Elementary, we have several rooms that have rooftop heat pumps. Those don't really get made very much anymore. The ones we have, we cannot get parts for. So it is time to start planning for the replacement of those as well. Any questions for me?
Thank you for laying that out for us.
Thanks, Chairman.
Does anybody else have questions for Mr. Eden? Is Mrs. Plucker here for a lobbyist report?
She is not. My apologies, she is not. She is still in hearings down in Lincoln. They changed the schedule for hearings. They're trying to get them all done. They do both morning and afternoon, but did have conversation. There are 3 bills that they're, first off, there are 126 different bills that are all related to education. There are close to 900 bills in total. I've listed 3 bills here that should take a look at. One of those has to do with property tax lids. And so if you look at this chart, you'll see that what we have here is our expenditure growth. Over the last 10 years, it's averaged 12%. Our formula students or student growth has averaged 10%. So when we look at our per pupil cost, when we take these two, this is not going to equal the same, but it is a expenditure department calculation by the Department of Education. We have grown on our budget per kid an average of 2.5%, where the state has averaged 3.5%. Now, why do I show you this? Because the first bill says that we can grow one of 3 ways. It will say, if I bring that back up, apology for jumping around here. In LB 589, it says that you can either go a 3% growth, or you can take 40% of your enrollment growth, or you can have the Board of Education pass at 70% a property tax increase of up to 5%. But the word is or. You can have 3 or, and last year we were at about 7% growth, so under 3 or 5%. Well, to open 2 new buildings last year, your budget grew 14.5%. And yet still we have needs for those buildings. For example, in the middle schools, our class size didn't go down because we hired more teachers. Class size stayed the same, or in some cases not. So even though we went up 14%, which is big, we still didn't meet the needs going into 2 new buildings. If this bill was in place as written, the maximum you could increase your budget would be 5% on the property tax side. Okay? So there is a amendment to LB 589 that we've heard of that will change the word or to and that would be very advantageous for Bennington. So 3% and the growth and 5% still wouldn't get you to 14%, but it would get you much closer. The other 2 bills, LB 583 and LB 681, all 3 of these are a package proposed by the governor. And so each of those is in different committees. The first one, 583, does provide $1,500 per student across the state of Nebraska. However, that $1,500 already comes to Bennington in the form of equalization aid. So the $1,500 is not new additional money. The other thing that is in 583 is it increases special ed reimbursement from about 40% up to about 80%. This would be additional revenue. And this is estimated to be between $800,000 and $900,000 for Bennington. And then 681 is what the governor calls a education future fund. This is the $1 billion that he would start with, and then 250 million each of 5 years after that, raising it to over $2 billion. At first, the governor came out and said, we will protect the foundation aid before we protect the equalization aid. I.e., when the money runs out or gets low, equalization aid is the first to be cut. We're going to save the foundation aid. The governor has changed. I have not seen the amendment yet, but he has written it so that equalization and foundation aid are in that package. So these are three very important bills. They're going to be changed and modified. I believe they're going to come out of each of these three committees and reach floor debate. Obviously, LB 589 is concerning if they don't create the amendment, because that would severely hamper the growth of growing districts, not just Bennington, but the suburban districts around Metro, Gretna, and Elkhorn as well. All three of us are working together to work with Senator Breezy, to work with the governor's office to see what we can get done. But there are a couple of charts. This kind of gives you an idea when you see the chart from the community. I know this is pretty dark, but when you look at Bennington, we're one of the highest to receive state equalization aid. In fact, there's just very few, Bellevue and Omaha, that receive more than Bennington. But as we've talked about, that's 41%, 42% of our total budget. When you look at the local property tax side of it, you see that we're the lowest. Thus, that's why we get one of the highest marks here. So when you start to limit this number, it limits our budget greatly. And then you can see up here the dollar amount per kid that would be given in the governor's package. That dollar amount is, I believe, the lowest of the group. And that is because the only thing received would be special education dollars. So hopefully these charts help with these bills as we move forward. There's some other bills that go along with this. Again, I said 126 bills, but these three bills all have to do with option enrollment. All three change the option enrollment in some form or fashion. There's actually a fourth bill out there that would eliminate the option enrollment law. Now, one would think, okay, that doesn't hurt Bennington because later in the agenda, we're going to cap our option enrollment. That bill actually says that it opens it up to basically a free-flowing, anybody, anywhere type proposal. So it's opposite of what you think in that regard. So those are the bills of interest. Again, 126 different ones. I highlighted 6 for you this evening. Are there any questions?
Can you go back to the bar chart and talk with us about, for example, I noticed West Side, if I'm reading that right, was over $2,000 per kid as compared to our $234 a kid?
Correct.
And that's because they get less equalization?
They receive no equalization. As you can see, their dollar amount is much more, twice that of ours. So they have assessed valuation on a per kid basis that is greater than ours, and thus they receive no equalization aid. However, they do receive option enrollment, net option funding of over $20,000. Keep in mind, West Side has about 1/3 of its populace is option enrollment students out of 6,000, so a little over 2,000.
So if this bill were to pass, our community should be prepared for other districts being able to lower their levy as opposed to us because of the nature of how the numbers work out with equalization and other moving pieces. But I just want people to be aware of that because I
That's,
wasn't until you explained that to me, so.
right, that's correct. The red up there, you know, particularly West Side, since we're there, would allow West Side to lower their levy almost 30 cents, where the $234 for Bennington would allow it to lower its levy just slightly over 4 cents. So there will be a discrepancy. You know, it'd be very difficult to communicate to people that, well, West Side did this, why couldn't we do that? Or particularly in the rural areas where their levies, I can name you districts to the north, to the south, and to the west that have property taxes that are 50 cents to our dollar. And they're getting more per student because they're non-equalized districts. Thus, they're able to lower their levy much lower than what Bennington would in this proposed plan. We are for the governor. We applaud the governor for putting more money into the pot for education. However, we would like the governor to look at all students equally as opposed to just those that are non-equalized for the $1,500.
Does anybody else have questions? Does anyone like your?
Back on the option enrollment, can you go back to that for a second?
The option enrollment policies?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're just showing with the bill that they're trying to get through.
Well, sure,
No, not policy, just what you were showing us, the bills.
yeah,
That legislature.
if I can.
Okay, so what you're discussing on that, where they're possibly going to open this up for free flow, I mean, like Omaha does right now, right? I mean, they can move from school district to just school district.
Yes,
That's
this
what
is
you're
free
talking
flow
about.
from district to district, not with internal.
Okay, that's what I was,
That is a bill, doesn't say it's gonna pass or has even gotten out.
okay. I just,
So, each of these bills have unique changes to the option enrollment. For example, the one by Senator Hansen up here north of us, from Blair, he is suggesting that if you are rejected, as we have several that will be later on, because we're capped or closed, then you get a voucher, if I say it that way, from the state that you can go to private school and the state will pay for that. So there, again, close to 900 bills. There are lots of ideas. Some of these bills don't get out of committee, never debated on the floor. I will tell you that these three for the governor's packages will get out of their respective committees.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think we're next on our spotlight report with the high school interventions.
Jody, would you like the clicker?
Yes. please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jody Green, Assistant Director of Student Services.
Cody Vogel, Assistant Principal, High School.
Greg Lamberty, Building Principal at the high school.
We'll lighten the mood for you and talk about MTSS. Our high school team, and really the entire district embarks on a process called MTSS. So it stands for Multi-Tiered System of Supports. Our purpose to this is really just to ensure that all students have the necessary support in every facet of their education to prepare them for completion of high school and beyond, right? So we're talking about behavior, social, emotional, academic, all of the support systems, procedures, everything we have in place to ensure that we're doing what's right by students. How we do this is we have a really dynamic group of educators that we meet regularly. Today, in fact, we were at ESU all day long with this team of teachers from multiple different departments, including counseling, academic areas and whatnot, administration, And what we're doing is just meeting regularly to always evaluate data that supports the procedures, processes, and systems we have in place. So making decisions for why do we recommend an academic support outside of school hours to ensure a student is successful, or looking at office referrals and really diving down into that data of why are we getting office referrals for certain reasons, and then trying to build those systems and processes to better support teachers and students alike within our school system. Our goals of MTSS really is just all the things listed here. We want to ensure students have positive relationships within their school because there's so much research that supports if students have a teacher or teachers that back them and support them, the success that they experience in high school and beyond. Our MTSS goal that we focused on for the last year specifically was just reducing that amount of Fs in grades 9 through 12, really because our goal is to have them complete high school. And by having an F, you are unable to do that because you're not getting the credits for your courses that you're taking, which leads to the second one. We want to make sure they're on track for graduation. We want to make sure that students have those connections with teachers to experience that success, and then just making sure that we have that academic support and opportunities to support students in, like I said, every facet of their education.
Yeah, so along with those supports, we have several offerings, whether inside or outside the school day, highlighted about 4 of them that we have here. Between the study centers, those are mainly focused on students that are able to meet directly with a teacher, in particular AM Study Center. Students can set up appointments with math, English, or science. Those run typically Monday through Thursday. A couple of our departments go through Friday from 7 to 7:45. A lot of times getting help with concepts, maybe studying for retakes, getting some other practice work done. PM Study Center after school. A lot of times students are going in maybe to retake tests, maybe just to get some assignments done. Both of our study centers are free for students to come in. They can make appointments with the teacher, or they can just come in after school. Academic coach is a little bit more intense. We have 2 English teachers, 2 math teachers that are there to support students from 3:20 to 4 o'clock twice a week. A lot of times that's focused on a little bit more of assignment completion, maybe helping students with some other practice and things there. And then Saturday school, which we run just about every Saturday from 8 to noon. Blessed to have about 3 or 4 staff members that are consistently willing to come in and help those and work with those students on a given Saturday. Our list will range from, at the beginning of the semester, we might have 5 students. I think towards the tail of the first semester, we had a Saturday where we had 40+ kids on a Saturday. And realistically speaking, our attendance is pretty impressive. We get students in there that need help. Once again, missing assignments, maybe some on assessments. We also, if the student is having attendance issues, we try to make up some instructional time on those Saturdays as well. So those are just a few of our supports outside the school day.
Just a little background as you look at this slide. We are in year 2 of our participation with the MTSS cohort through ESU3. So there are several other school districts that we're going through. Year 1 last year was more or less a research. What are our problems? What are our issues? How can we assist kids? And one thing we noticed as we looked at logs of the out of school or outside the school interventions was our kids, probably not surprisingly, the kids that struggled were not the ones that came in early in the morning. They weren't the ones that stayed after, and they typically weren't the ones that came in on Saturday. So we went back and took a hard look at what within the school day could we provide our kids. One thing we started last year when Dr. Blumenkamp was the building principal that we've continued is our freshman study halls. So we have general study halls every hour of the day. We have taken our freshmen out of the general setting, and they are with a specific teacher who is able to coordinate assignments, AR reading, presentations, and those types of things, help with organization to make sure our freshmen get off to a little more structured start. We can't guarantee that the homework is always getting done, but Big Brother, so to say, is at least always watching them. The foundations classes have been developed over time with algebra, geometry, and advanced algebra. Those are support classes. They count for an elective credit. So a lot of times a kid that maybe scored in the semester-wise or has gone 6 weeks and is in the 60%, low 70s, or has a MAP score that we've done at the beginning of the year that indicates, they're going to struggle, they would be placed in a foundations class at the end of the day where the concepts that are covered in class are reinforced through a variety of activities or instructional methods. Guided study halls are run primarily by our English department, so they oversee kids that need help with writing, need help with reading, need help with comprehension. And we're starting to develop in our English and math classes co-taught sections where we have a regular math or English teacher, and then there is a second teacher in there with a special education background to assist that population with the classroom demands. Credit recovery, graciously, this is the first year that we've been able to offer that within the school day, and that has been a home run. So we have been able to put kids into first, second, third, or seventh or eighth hour that need to recover a failed semester of biology, a failed semester of world geography. And when they are done with that course, if they don't have any other classes, they then can use that time as a study hall. Advisory period is something we'll cover here in a little while. I will tell you that was what we decided last year was something that we could implement within our school day that wasn't going to blow up our master schedule and was going to be something that could serve every single kid and wasn't going to cost us $1. Those are probably some pretty important pieces to keep in mind as we talk about advisory period. We have the homeroom, which run opposite, so advisory period is held on Tuesday for 20 minutes, and homeroom is held on Thursday for 20 minutes. Then we have our last desperation tactic that Mr. Bobles and I use is directed study halls. Those are for the kids at the end of the semester that have basically procrastinated, which is not a skill we teach, but it is something we try to cure with collecting assignments from our teachers, putting them down in the office, and kids just do assignment after assignment after assignment until they have turned in enough work to push their grade to a passing grade.
So more specifically about the advisory period, what is it? 20 minutes of academic focus 1 day a week between third and fourth hour. So we were try to be intentional with how we group kids to make sure that they have access to a content area teacher with which they might be struggling in that given course or class. And really, like Dr. Landry had said, we just want to assist academic success with students through reteaching and reinforcing how important it is to make sure that we have assignments caught up and assignments are being turned in and how the impact that has on their overall grade. And then enrichment whenever possible. Right now we have 2 core teachers paired with each other, so the class is essentially doubled in size, so there's more students in there. Rationale for that was just to ensure that students have access to more than one content area teacher during that time in an effort to try to catch more students, if you will. And this is just a process, like I just want to reiterate, it's ongoing improvement, right? Continuous improvement, the cycle that every school system takes part in, where we know we always have to evaluate the system and continue to improve it. And the team did great work today and has a lot more work to do and continuing to customize and craft this period to get the biggest bang for our buck, if you will, to ensure that we continue on the path of what we're doing to enrich students' learning and make sure they're successful throughout high school.
So obviously, one of the things that you want to do anytime you're implementing, something that is, in this case, new to the school, one of the biggest variables for us would obviously be advisory. As an MTSS team, we love data. So, we're always looking at different data points. Our goal as a team is to reduce the number of failures that we have in our school building. And so our goal overall, which we recently just increased because we were seeing some success, is that 90% of our students will not be failing any classes by the end of the school year. So just to compare fall of 21, fall of 22, you're seeing up there on the screen, we were taking a look at number of total Fs, number of students that had Fs, just what stands out initially when we looked at this data as a team was that in the fall of 21, we had 15.2% of our students that had Fs. That decreased from 15.2 to 11.2%. In the fall, so that tells us that we are seeing an impact. Whether or not that's just advisory or some other things we're doing, that's sort of telling us that we're on the right track. And then looking at grade levels, it's best to look at it from 9th to 10th, because obviously those students going on the next year. But in each of those different areas, we are seeing a decrease in the number of Fs we look at by grade level. Particularly the biggest drop was 11th to then the seniors. Probably some maturation in there, some students have figured it out a little bit, but we certainly saw a pretty significant decrease in the number of Fs there, which is what we want to see. And then just a little bit of other data. We talk about, obviously in high school, we're working on credits. And so students pass the class, they earn the given credit. And so this gives you an idea based on different classes, what we're looking at. This is the most up-to-date that we have, freshmen through seniors. The biggest thing I would point out, so the numbers, obviously these students, we're looking at your 15 freshmen or the 15 juniors. These are the students that obviously as an MTSS team, like we had discussions today, these are the students that, depending on what the data looks like when it comes to GPA, credits, attendance, all those different things, we're looking at how can we attack these students to help them be successful. And that's really what our goal is. We want to see those numbers decrease as far as seeing fewer students not on track. And so that kind of fits in with our previous goal, but really narrowing out these students and how we can help them be successful.
The last piece on that previous slide, just a reminder that it's 50 credits to earn your diploma at Bennington High School. So we kind of use that as our guide, like that's our ending point. We try to plan backwards with those students. And then the other piece is an 8-period day. So most kids are taking 7 out of 8 classes. Obviously we get a kid that's a senior that's a little behind. We're either filling their schedule back up for them or they're going the credit recovery route to try and beat that deadline of the graduation date. One area that is developed and continues to come up in our conversations is math, mainly because it is concept dependent, and if you don't have a solid foundation, whether that is coming from a previous district, whether that's starting at Bennington High School as a freshman, or being with our district for multiple years, if you don't come in and you aren't able to do algebra right now at Bennington High School, you're going to struggle. And you're probably going to fall behind. We don't offer algebra in our credit recovery program because of that conceptual challenge and because there are so many pieces that rely on kids building on that foundation. So we went back to 2019 and 20, which we all know was when COVID hit. And beginning in the spring of 20 and over the next 2 years, we had failure rates anywhere between 6 and 16%. I will tell you, we are now closer to the 6% than the 16, but we are still trying to catch kids up that are part of that 16. This last semester, 16 out of 265 failed, so 6%. I will tell you most recently, we picked up 3 kids in the last 2 weeks that came to us and their class is pre-algebra. They came from a different district, and so we have to make the decision. They are not students with special education, but they were taking pre-algebra at their prior district, and so our option is to put them in algebra. Not algebra day 1, algebra day 109 or 10. And those experiences are pretty painful for everybody involved, whether that's the kid that's likely in over their head, the administrator, the counselor, and the classroom teacher that are trying to search for solutions on how to support that kid. A regular track, so normally a freshman comes in, they take algebra, they take geometry as a sophomore, they take advanced algebra. High school requires 3 years, 6 credits of math for graduation. We do push students to take that 4th year. Our curriculum aligns in that manner so that obviously we feel kids are most prepared to take the ACT test if they're on that track. So what does pre-algebra do? We did write a proposal in the curriculum process this year. It is proposal number 5. It does attempt to address those students who are coming to us with lower math scores that maybe have multiple Fs either at the high school, a semester, 2 semesters, multiple hexters at a middle school. We would also look at attendance as a factor because as we stated, that sometimes plays a role into low scores. Teacher recommendation, and then obviously a student's existing algebra grade. But if a student were to be placed in pre-algebra, one thing we would talk about to parents is that they are no longer on a track that's likely going to prepare them for a quality ACT performance, and they likely would need a fourth year of math to be considered college ready, because it would shorten up that cycle. They would technically end at geometry. That's anywhere from 16 to probably 30, 35 kids right now. And we feel like these bumpers, so to say, would also protect maybe is too strong of a word, but we know there will be parents that come to us and say, well, my kid got a 72 in algebra, I want them dropped into pre-algebra. And that's not something we would want to do. We would want that kid to continue to be in algebra with the supports of foundation, academic coach, advisory period, so that they can maintain that 3-year on-track ACT college course preparation. Approximate or appropriate supports is something that we've already talked about. That's just ongoing. The team, I wasn't there today, but the team has developed an early warning system, which will aid us in identifying kids sooner and get those interventions put in place. Advisory time and homeroom, again, pretty fluid situation, but there's just conversations. And I think an important piece in all this is the students. What are their perspectives? What do they need? How can we best serve and support them? And then work that with the strength of our staff and make sure that we're supplying kids with opportunities. Guided study hall with a focus on reading comprehension. And then the last part, again, ongoing. It becomes tougher, especially this time of year and in May, when we get to the end of the semester with grading. We're talking about retakes. We're talking about daily assignments. We're talking about 2 teachers teaching the same course. And are they grading similar? Are they consistent? And what interventions are they using? I think that just is conversations with staff as we try to best serve our student population. That is, I don't want to say changing, but it's definitely, there's some pieces in there at work that we need to address. Questions for us?
Back on that, what you just talked about in the pre-algebra, you're saying that there's like about 35 students on average that are kind of in that.
Average is, I would say, approximately 35 students right now. That number has grown. So 2 years ago, the first thing we did was we came out of COVID and we had a 16% semester failure rate. So Aaron Holt and Aaron Carter, 2 of our algebra teachers, decided to write a summer curriculum for algebra so we could turn around and address some of those kids in algebra. And we've managed to do that to an extent. However, there's this section of kids that most of them are not special education kids, or they're not qualifying for basic math, which we do offer basic math and basic math 1 and 2, which are taught by special education teachers, not math teachers. So that's really kind of the only fallback is if you have a kid that is qualified for services with a math disability, we can put them in basic math, but a kid that doesn't qualify, we got a kid trying to pass algebra for the 3rd time right now. He's a junior and he has not entered a math credit yet. And that's, it's hard. And I'm not saying pre-algebra is a cure-all, but it is an opportunity to build that kid's confidence, kind of help them get set to get through algebra, because algebra is a required course for our handbook and curriculum guide for graduation.
So that student, and those students who are coming from elsewhere that are in pre-algebra, the math, you're finding that the math foundations in addition to algebra is not sufficient to get them where they need to be.
That's correct. The foundations class, some people might look at that and they would say that that's a study hall, but it's not a study hall. In order for it to be an elective credit, typically what happens is the group of kids, we try to keep it at 8 per teacher. And they go in and Mr. Olson, Mrs. Carter, Mrs. Burgers, they have a specific set of problems for those kids to work on. And they complete those assignments in class. There typically is no homework. So the teachers are very careful to assign a targeted set of problems or an activity. The activity is completed, the problems are turned in, kids earn their points, which is a separate grade. And then if time allows, they have time to study for quizzes, tests, or complete their homework.
was curious too, sorry, if there was, what is the credit recovery program that you all use? Is it Edmentum or is it something you've developed?
It is Odyssey-ware.
Honestly,
Yep, and so what we'll do is we'll take the courses that they have in there, and we can custom build them to more or less reflect or mirror what's being taught during the school year.
thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you all for providing us the data, and I know that's important to me to see the data and see where we're identifying problems. And Tim, do you have something?
I was just gonna ask, you brought up something about attendance. Are we having that trouble that attendance is bad on some of these?
I'll let Mr. Gobles, our attendance bulldog, answer that one. I still have nightmares about some of that stuff.
Thanks, Dr. Liberty. Appreciate that. I mean, I guess, year one, here, I would say, from what I've heard from other districts similar in size, I would still say we're in pretty good shape when compared to other districts, especially in the metro. Do we deal with our fair share of truancy? Absolutely. Excessive absenteeism certainly exists. And those are challenging things, and we had discussion about that today in our workshop, and those are some of the hardest things to address because when the student's not in their seat, it makes it that much more challenging in which to educate that student. And so trying to come up with different ways, and I would say, we're still searching a lot, as a lot of people are, on how we can, really encourage those students to get to school. But we have our battles, but I would say overall Bennington is pretty fortunate when it comes to absenteeism.
Good. Thank you. I just feel the same way. You guys are working your tails off, I feel, for everything, so I kind of wish they would want to do the same thing, so we make life a little easier for you.
Yeah, and I would say I deal with tardies as well. One thing I say about tardies is at least they're tardy and they're still coming to school, so that they can make the choice not to. So I'm always I'm okay dealing with that part.
So wonderful. Thank you.
Else? Thank you very much. We still have some action items, and I know NASB is something to be here at 7:30, so we will keep going. I know we have some critical items to discuss. Just wanted the board to be mindful of that as well. The next item is unfinished business. This is an item that Steve brought before before me and asked if I would consider. The Board of Education has previously looked at how do we provide information to the public with respect to our agenda and what the attachments are. And previously what we've done is we were still working on certain items over the weekend and come Monday. And so we weren't uploading all of those documents for the community to review until after the board meeting. And so I wanted the board to have an opportunity to talk about that, but Steve's recommendation was that we just go ahead and upload things as they come and make those available to the community. I don't see that it's necessarily a violation of policy. It's not spelled out in there exactly to do it one way or the other, but I appreciate Steve's input on that. Does anybody else have feedback on that, whether you want to go that route or not? That's what we came for a discussion on this evening.
My experience is most of the school districts out there are putting the items available for the public to review prior to the meeting, so I would certainly be on board with changing our process there to make them available prior to the vote meeting.
Okay. And I know we were talking about, I want the community to understand that's why it's an agenda item. It's a change in process, right?
Yes.
Not a change in policy, but also that, some things won't be available on Friday when the agenda is put out. It's a tentative agenda. I appreciate the administrative efforts, sometimes things just aren't ready, right? Or we're dealing with a lobbying report, for example, where things are coming in Monday afternoon, right? Where stuff isn't available. So as long as the community has an understanding that some of those items will be uploaded at various times, and that's what we're intending to do.
Yes, absolutely. Just caution that those things outside the district are the ones that usually come late. Out of our control per se, a third-party vendor, somebody outside the district that won't have it ready until Monday. So those things won't be available because they're not in our control.
Perfect. Anybody else have feedback on that piece?
I would agree with what Jeremy said. I know Mr. Carlson has spoken many times, wanting to speak maybe at the end of the meetings because he's not sure what's being discussed. until after the meeting's already, well, once the meeting's done, that you would like to discuss. Well, this would maybe give the public a chance to realize what we are discussing, what is going on, and they can talk to us prior about what we are going to be discussing later in the meeting. So, yeah, I'm all for that.
Okay, great.
These documents will also still be available at the district office, too. So people that don't use computers or need to be able to access, you can still come in and get those. We're just gonna make them available online, so the people that can't make it here are able to get to those documents.
All right, I'm not hearing any objections, so I guess we'll go forward with that, and it's kind of a work in process, so we'll try to make improvements as we go along, and we'll certainly take feedback, and thank you again, Steve, for your help on that. The next item is discussing and approving the school calendar for the 24-25 year. This is always an item of interest to those in the community. Dr. Hawk, since we have several new board members, you want to just briefly highlight the process for this? I know we're short on time, but just I appreciate how we let the staff provide input in terms of what they think as well.
Yes, we have 3 calendars we brought before the community and the board in January. That has been narrowed down by the staff to draft number 2. That provides a full spring break week. The challenge that the staff saw was trying to provide that in-service day Thursday before kids come in on Wednesday. So we are asking that we take it back to the staff to see where they want that in-service. Do they want it at the traditional Friday before kids come in on Wednesday? That would mean that in-service has to be placed in the second semester. Or are they preferring that it be Thursday to continue with that spring break and less disruption in the second semester? So we are suggesting that the board table and take it back for a survey one more time. We brought back at the March meeting.
And will you highlight, does it include the early out days as we've typically done, or?
We typically have not put the early out days in 2 years in advance. We will put those in a year in advance.
Thank you for that clarification.
So this is what you're looking at this evening to table is the 24-25 calendar, 2 years out.
And it does include the built-in snow days. I know there were some questions from folks about that, how we decide that, and how we add those back in.
Yes, it does have built-in snow days. However, the 24-25 as proposed has a limited scope for built-in snow days because of that full spring break.
Okay. If we're gonna table it, I don't see that there's a need for any motion or anything.
There is no need for a motion.
This is the topic conversation. Does the board have additional questions on the calendar? Okay, all right.
Can you scroll so I can just see? I was curious.
I was trying to scroll, but the.
Computer's not cooperating. Okay, thank you. All right, the next item up for discussion is the discussion with respect to the option enrollment, which you alluded to earlier. Dr. Hawk, do you want to talk us through that piece?
Option enrollment, you do have 2, apologize, well, I'm going to talk through this, so I'm going to stop sharing with the community here. And we're going to try to upload this again. So again, my apologies for the delay. All right, back to operating normal. So, option enrollment by state statute does allow a district to limit option enrollment due to capacity. Capacity does not have to be physical space. It is also budget and teachers to be in those classrooms. Therefore, it has been a long-standing practice by Bennington Public Schools because of our rapid growth to limit or cap, because of capacity, option enrollment. We are recommending that the Board of Education do that again this evening. As you can see, it does not prevent option enrollment for Bennington Public Schools. How do 70 students come in when there is no option enrollment? It is a state statute that says a student that is in the district for 2 or more years is automatically accepted as an option enrollment student. Therefore, a student that has completed kindergarten or first grade, as an example, is eligible to stay in the district if family or residency moves outside the district. And thus, that is the majority of our 70 students, if not all, that are under option enrollment. But as you can see, we have more students out than come in. We do not receive any net option funding because of that.
And the option outs are for various reasons. Would you elaborate on some of those for the community to understand?
Option out are for various reasons. A lot of time that is related to childcare, but it's also related to programming. So if we have a student, for example, that is an outstanding swimmer, we do not offer swimming as an activity. They will go to a school district that does offer such.
I think there is a motion on the table.
Just real quick one question. The 152 opting out, is that similar to what we see year to year, or is that?
I'd have to go back and look, but to my memory, yes.
After all, he's nodding behind.
Okay,
good. Like you got
Glad
that.
she's behind me then. So, we've had anywhere from 150 to 200 is my recollection.
Any further discussion? All right, is there a motion related to option enrollment? All right, I move to approve the resolution to set the grade level capacity enrollment for policy number 502.02, non-resident students, and regulation 502.02R1, non-resident students option enrollment as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Is there further discussion on this item?
No.
Jody, will you call the roll?
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Christie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes. Motion carries. I believe the next item on the agenda is to discuss, consider, and take action on the mechanical and control service agreement. Dr. Hawk, do you want to help us understand what the contracts are before us for review?
Absolutely. Heating and air conditioning, it's in every building, and it is a huge budget when it comes to building a building. That equipment over time does have usage, obviously, and does fail at times. This is a service agreement that, as you see, the $73,000, $73,410 will cover a checklist 2 times a year where that mechanical service company will come in and review the equipment. There is an additional $24,000 contract that you will approve in one motion, both companies, for controls of that equipment. In the past, this has been wrapped into one. The district felt it was best to have 2 different contracts related to this. As you see down there, the cost breakdown, obviously the bigger buildings have more equipment, thus a larger cost. This is not the only cost that will be associated with heating and air conditioning. There is additional costs that go along with that. The actual repair of something defined in that service semi-annual check does need to be repaired. For example, we have 7 boilers at the high school. One of those boilers has a cracked heating unit that is not functioning right now. So there will be additional costs to go along and repair that boiler. So this is for the service agreement. And we did go out and receive bids from another company. That other company was higher than what we have had with MMC in the past. We have been working with MMC for several years, and we feel that they know our equipment, and they provide techs that are very familiar with the equipment that we We make the recommendation you work with MMC and train for service and control, mechanical and control services.
All right, there's a motion on the table. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion?
I move to approve a service agreement with MMC as a single source provider for mechanical services at a cost of $73,410, and a control service agreement with Trane at a cost of $24,267 on district HVAC equipment and controls for a term of 3 years.
Thank you, Kara. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Joe, did we call, oh, I guess we haven't had much discussion, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Does anybody have any feedback or commentary on this particular item?
Yeah, does this go into the budgeting committee? Do you guys handle this, the contracts?
Typically, it goes through the building and finance committee, but we have not met, and this is an item that is up for renewal.
Right, the budget committee was informed that we were working and that we had to, by policy, get 2 bids.
So everybody in the budget committee's reviewed it and you're good with it?
Yes. Yes.
No further discussion?
Anybody else? All right, Jody, call the roll.
Steve,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
Kara.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. The next item before us tonight is with respect to the purchase of some transportation equipment recommended by the coordinator of district facilities, Mr. Edens. And it looks like it's some additional buses that are needed to accommodate more growth in our student population riding buses.
Yes, and I do want to emphasize additional. These are not to replace anything we have, but we typically have anywhere from 22 to 24% of our populace do a route morning and afternoon bus. If we were to grow 100 students, we would add 20 more riders. So if we're looking at 2 to 250 students, we're looking at approximately 50 to 60 more riders. That is a bus, typically. Now, we also have needs for special education students that are contracted out. That too grows as the district grows. Those buses are more difficult to find, and they have special equipment in them. Thus, when you see a 42-passenger bus that costs more than a 77-passenger bus, know that it has a wheelchair lift and special seats that go along with that. So we have been in the practice for the last 5 to 7 years of purchasing used buses. With a diesel engine, we feel pretty comfortable with 35 to 50,000 miles, 1-year lease turned in, and then going out and purchase them. We've had very good luck. We are pretty particular on the engine that we look at. We look at a Cummins engine because that have the best track record for us. So Dr. Edens, he just got elevated. Mr. Edens has been scouring the country. He has found 2. You have a budget of approximately $250,000. $200,000 for route buses, $50,000 for special ed. These would fall under the route. We do have needs for vans, and as said, we cannot find vans. If you were to order a van today for school, it's 2 years out. Other districts have been going away from the Chevy, Ford, GMC, and buying Mercedes-Benz. We didn't think a Mercedes-Benz sticker would go very well in the community. So we are still looking for that van. If we find used, we would bring it before the committee and then for the board. But what we're telling you is we still have need for van or vans as we move forward. We make a recommendation that you enter in agreements to buy these 2 vehicles.
All right, there's a motion on the table, and then we can have some discussion. Does anybody want to make the motion this evening?
I so move to authorize the superintendent to enter into an agreement with the following company for the purchase of 2 off-lease buses as presented. 2020 Thomas C2 42 passenger with 35 to 45,000 miles from truck centers for 95,200. And the 2021 Thomas C2 77 passenger with 20 to 35,000 miles from truck centers for 92,850.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Christy.
One reason that we have a range is these are lease that will be turned in the summer. So we don't have the exact mileage on the odometer at this time.
So you're reading my mind for my first question, right?
I hope not.
Steve, did you have anything else?
I was just gonna ask how we don't, the mileage, but
They'll be turned in June.
yeah, that's fine.
One main question is, do we have drivers?
We probably don't at this point in time. I mean, yes, that's obviously a question. But
Let's hope we do.
in the case you have drivers, you need the bus. So,
I know one of them we talked about in the past is the cost per family for riding the bus, and as our program continues to grow, I know the board has discussed that before, do we have to bump that up? We're relatively low compared to other districts. That would be one item I would say is a follow-up that would be helpful for us to understand. And if we do have to go that route, I'd like to give families as much notice as possible.
right.
Any other questions with respect to the purchase motion on the table?
You touched a little bit about diesel engines and the mileage there. What about the special ed bus? What sort of life expectancy can we expect, like the lifts and the additional equipment that's in that bus?
The main thing to that special ed bus would be the engine, but all the other parts and pieces, including the lift, wheelchair lift, can be repaired or can be replaced. Most commonly with the bus, the body and the seats will wear out before that Cummins engine. And we have taken some of that back into, we have replaced seats, we have had body repair on some of the rust that goes along with that.
I guess one of the questions I would have too, since I haven't been on the budget and finance or been involved in that, what's the difference in cost, or what's the cost benefit to buying versus leasing if these other school districts are leasing for a year?
We have not looked into that.
I mean, one of the benefits I would see would be the maintenance issues, right? I mean, you're usually in year two and things like that, you start working into it. Year three, you're probably looking at some stuff on the engine and definitely in brakes for sure.
That certainly would be a possibility, but those would be written into the lease as well. So leases can vary whether you're paying for it, they're paying for it, so on and so forth. But we have not looked into that.
Any other discussion? All right, Jody, call the roll.
Christy?
Yes.
Kara? Yes. Steve?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, the next item before us is a proposal to go into executive session to discuss the certificated staff negotiations. We do anticipate action coming out of executive session to let the folks in the room know. There is a motion, we have to make a motion to go into executive session. It has to be approved, so there is a motion on the table.
I move to have the board go into executive closed session at 7:29 for the purpose of strategy session with respect to employee negotiation as an executive session is really necessary for the protection of the public interest.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kara. All right, the board is going into closed session and we will meet back in here at the conclusion of that. And then just as we don't normally have another agenda item after executive session. In addition to potential actions, we do have more information on the superintendent search process related to the interview questions. So it's going to be a long evening. So thanks everyone for hanging in there with us.
return time.
Yes, I'll call this meeting back to order at 8:14. There is a motion on the table with respect to certificated employee individual contracts. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the terms and conditions of employment, better known as negotiated agreement, for the 2023-24 school term between the Bennington Board of Education and the Bennington Education Association.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy. On behalf of the board, just want to thank the Bennington Education Association for the negotiations this year. I think it went really well. I know we had a turnover of board members, and I would appreciate their patience in waiting to get new folks on board to continue our discussions. So thank you from the board. And Jody, do you want to call the roll?
Kara? Yes. Christie?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, the next item is Nebraska Association of School Boards. And I know we're running late, so thank you both for, I know you're coming from another meeting,
It
so
worked out just fine. Yep.
good.
We had a meeting.
You got a minute to take a breath?
Earlier, and then we had time to drive here, so it was really worked out. So, how is everybody besides probably tired?
We're tired,
It's
yes.
been a long night, right?
We still have important work to do, so I appreciate you all
We
coming.
do, but we're gonna try and make it easy on you. We don't have too much to do tonight, so I don't anticipate this is gonna take a really long time. So I'm sure you're all happy to hear that, right?
It's Monday, yes.
Yes. So, I do have some handouts here. And I'll have Abby. Oh, you got them. Yeah. I'm like, where did I go? I lost it. All right. Do you need me to?
Yes, if you don't mind speaking.
Talk loudly into the mic.
Yes, we've had feedback that I think us up here have not been loud enough, so.
Okay, I'll do my best here to speak tonight. So here's what I want to just touch on tonight. First of all, a very quick review of our timeline, where we're at on things. So we're going to be meeting next Tuesday, the 21st, is our district visit to the stakeholders. And I know that information has been communicated to everybody as far as what time I'm going to be meeting with groups. I'll be the one that'll be here. And so I'll start at 9:30 in the morning, and we'll visit with district office staff, and then district office directors, classified staff from 1 to 2, building administrators, certified staff, and then community and parents and students. We're all invited to come at 6. So I think everything's going to take place in here. That's not something the board needs to come to. And in fact, people may speak a little freer if the board isn't here, but you're certainly not prevented from coming by any means. So I'll be doing that on Tuesday. And then the next date, which I'm sure you're aware of, our application deadline is coming up on Saturday, February 25th. We have been actively recruiting and have some very quality applicants that are interested in the position. So we need some people to follow through with their applications, but I think things are going really well. And so hopefully I feel that way in another week, but so far I think things are looking good. So I do believe you'll have some quality people to consider for the position, and I don't know that you'll have a large group of applicants because there's just not a lot of people applying for superintendent jobs, but you still will have some qualified people. So that's good news. So then we'll be meeting on March 1st at 5 p.m. the board and us to discuss the applicants, and you'll be able to pick out interview candidates that evening or that late afternoon. Also on that day, we'll come just a little bit early at 4 o'clock and meet with the stakeholder team members that are invited to help with the interviews, and you'll be looking at that list here in a moment so that we can provide them with sample interview questions. They can also create their own questions, but we do give them some sample questions to kind of guide that for them and talk to them about protocol and procedures. And then we'll meet with the board right after that. And then the interviews are scheduled for the 6th and 8th. 6th and 8th. So that's kind of our timeline coming up. Any questions about that? Okay. The profile that I showed you last time when we were here, I haven't heard any feedback from anybody on that, so I would assume that's good to go. We can move forward with things on that. Is that right?
Did anybody have any feedback on that? I know I reviewed it. I didn't have anything specific.
I didn't have any. Okay. We're gonna run with that then, so, okay. And then, of course, let's see. The next document you should have there in front of you And that is a candidate assessment document that we have, that we can have you utilize. What we'll do is we'll add the profile to the front page, just mostly as a guiding point, because you do want to make sure that everything relates back to this leadership profile. Interview questions, comparison of candidates, really everything that we do moving forward, we want to kind of come back to that leadership profile. So I will add that to the front, but as you look at this, it gives you the opportunity, if you're somebody who likes to score things, which some of you probably are and some of you might not be. That's what we usually find with our boards. Some people really like this sort of thing. So you're able to rank, or I guess you'd say score, the different candidate pieces of their application, as well as their interview itself. So on the first, once you pick who you'd like to interview, you'll be able to take those materials home and go through them and score them before the interview process itself. And that way, when you come to the interviews and you finish those, you can individually go through and score the interview part and then add it up. This will help when you are deliberating. If you have a couple of candidates that are close together, you're able to compare your scores and talk about why did this person think this was a 3 and this person thought it was a 1. So that'll be important. So if you're able to do these, it might help when you come to the end. So if you like something like this, I'll make copies so that you have a copy for each candidate and you can utilize them.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, we'll plan on that then. The next document you're going to see there is called Interview Protocol. And this is something you can probably read on your own. I don't necessarily need to read to you, but I am going to just point a few things out to you. So once you pick your interview candidates, we usually will allow a day or so before we release those names. So I wouldn't anticipate we would release the names of the interview candidates at the meeting on the 1st. Because we have to allow a few minutes to email the people who did not get invited to interview. And then we also need to let those people who you invited to interview tell their board or whoever still they might want to inform in their own districts. The next day, then those names will become public. So what we usually do is we utilize a letter system that we have approved with the Attorney General's office. We met with them last summer and talked about this process that we've been using. And so we'll refer to them in open session by the letter that coordinates with their applicant file. But we'll be in closed session for most of that discussion on applicants. But just so you know, we won't release the names of those interview candidates until the next day, most likely, to the public. Obviously, you guys will know because you're picking them. So anyway, but everything is done in open session as far as the interviews, the board interviews. So anybody can come and listen to those and sit in the audience. So just so you know that, that is an open part of the board meeting. And then there are a lot of little tips and tricks on page 2, 3, 4 as you prepare for interviews. You're going to use, obviously, a written list of questions. Once those questions are finalized, we'll make copies and bring those to the interview process because I believe we're planning to be here for that. At least I am. So we'll plan on bringing those for you then once they're finalized by the board. There's a few other notes in here on page 2. There is a note kind of 3/4 of the way through. We do try to keep copies of the feedback that you receive from the stakeholder groups. We keep copies of that on file for our retention of records policy. You can keep copies here too if you want to keep copies of it, but we just want to keep a copy. And if somebody does interview that doesn't get hired, we like to try and give them just a couple nuggets of feedback so that if they move forward and apply somewhere else in the future, that might be helpful for them. So we will keep that feedback, so we'll be sure to hang on to that. And then we do, when you do the interview process, just a couple more little tidbits and then you can kind of read the rest on your own, but we do recommend that you all take a turn in asking questions to the candidate. So I would assume your setup would be just like this. You'd have the candidate sitting here and the board would be in the front and you would each kind of just take turns going around your list of questions so that you all have a chance to have eye contact with the candidate. And you could just have your board president ask all the questions, but it's kind of nice to have the whole board be involved in that. So that's kind of what we would recommend. And then other than that, obviously, since I'll be here, a lot of this we're gonna talk about the day of. So the last little piece on page 3, when all questions are complete, that's kind of in the middle of the page then, expressing appreciation, of course, providing a timeline. So what we usually do is we usually do an exit interview, like a verbal exit interview. So those people that interview on the 6th, we would contact them the next morning and just ask them if they have questions. Have they changed their mind? Are they still interested? So that if for some reason it didn't seem like a good match for them, we're able to convey that to the board and you don't deliberate about somebody that might not be interested anymore. I don't anticipate that happening, but you just never know. So we'll try and do exit interviews. Wednesday night, same thing. As people are leaving the district, I'll be here to do an exit interview as they're leaving or contact them shortly after so that you have all the information you need before you deliberate. Make sense? Okay, so like I said, the rest of that you can kind of read on your own, but that's just a little, some of you maybe have never interviewed before at your jobs, and so it's just nice to see some little ideas there. The next document we're going to talk about is the interview schedule. And I think we brought a copy of this to you last time as well, but we've switched a little bit around and have it a little bit more shored up, I guess you'd say. So it looks very similar, but just take a glance at it and make sure you don't have any problems with any of that. And then right behind that document, you're going to see the list of names of people. And Dr. Hoagie has been working very hard, so we appreciate everything she's doing, and I'm sure you do too, to put together some team member names. And that was what you charged her with at the last meeting, so she's done an excellent job with that. So do want you to take a gander at that as well. And so there is some instruction on there just so that board members know kind of what the roles and responsibilities, the makeup of the teams, different individuals that were invited to participate. There were a couple of people on there that had not confirmed as of tonight, but it sounds like one of those has now, so there's just maybe 1 or 2 people that have not gotten back to her yet. But if you do have any direct questions, I know she would be happy to answer those as well. So I'll just give you a minute to kind of look through that list here.
And some of the schedule changes was based on when we were going to be interviewing, right? And so we were starting earlier on the interviews, and so we bumped things up. But we were still able to do 2 lunches. Well, the community members are going to have lunch, kind of a meet and greet. Yep. And then since we have 2 candidates, the second lunch time would be with the district facilities tour that we're thinking.
So, right, we would have the first candidate would eat lunch probably right before they meet with the community, maybe right as they get back from that tour, because it'll be hard for them to eat while they're doing the majority of the talking in that community meeting. And that's going to be a less formal type of interview setting where they will just have the opportunity to have them each introduce themselves and their connection to the school, and then have the candidates just talk a little bit about some things important to them, community related, etc. So we'll have the candidate probably eat just right before they get in there. And then the other candidate, obviously that's getting to be a little bit late for them to be eating, and also because the community's already eaten, we'll probably have them eat at the tail end of the facilities tour. And so the other thing that we switched around was because Dr. Hoagie is going to be helping with that facilities tour, we wanted to be sure to have the time switched for the central office staff, so she would be done with the tours in time to join that group and sit in on the interviews. So we switched, I believe, building principal or the building administrator and the central office staff flip-flopped from the original schedule that you looked at, just to provide that time so that she would be able to go to that interview.
And so for the rest of the groups, the questions for the interview are going to be selected by the board. Or not, I'm asking.
Right.
Okay.
So we actually have packets that are specific to administrators, specific to certified, specific to all the different groups. So they're able to look at them. Now, the community probably won't have a set group of questions, because like I said, that's gonna be a little less formal time. And they're still gonna be able to provide you feedback through, we usually do that through a written list. This is what the certified group found to be strengths of candidate one, number one, or A, or whatever you wanna call it. And these are the weaknesses that we found in candidate one. And then the board will review that, positives in open session, negatives in closed session, so that we don't damage anybody's reputation. So we do have set questions we give them. Like I said earlier, they're welcome to create their own or combine some of ours, but we will take a look at those and make sure that they are questions that can be asked.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have questions?
Okay, so we're good to move forward with these team members and such, okay?
Yeah, well, actually, I do have a question. So,
You bet.
more of a, statement, I guess. Could you explain again for the public as far as the meet and greet and what that looks like during lunchtime?
So the meet and greet will be with those individuals that are listed there. And so, and it says on the interview schedule here too, that the community members introduce themselves, describe the organization that they represent or how they're connected with the school district. And maybe talk a little bit about what, they hope for the future of Bennington Public Schools. And then the candidates can respond and just kind of tell about themselves, explain a little bit about their background and why they are interested in coming to Bennington Public Schools and what their strengths are, things like that. So it'll be, like I said, a little less formal. We're not going to necessarily have structured questions for them.
And for anybody that's not on this list, I know we can't include every teacher and every office person.
I know.
And we've been trying to find ways for them to contribute as well. I know we've done an online survey. And really, it would be helpful if those folks came to the district visit, because that's in person with you guys. We aren't there.
Absolutely.
That's another opportunity. So I guess for folks that are not on that list, I hope they'll consider doing some of that as well.
Yes, and so I appreciate you mentioning that, because I know there had to be some, you have to somehow make the teams a reasonable number so that it's not overwhelming for the candidate, and just trying to ensure that all the different stakeholder groups are represented, if you will. And so we do have that opportunity with the district visit. We would love people to come to that and share their thoughts. And we talk a little bit about the process so that I'm able to explain to them what our role is and just how things work. Because a lot of times that's what a lot of it is the questions about how the people are screened or what we do for reference checks or different things like that. So they're more than welcome to come to that and share their thoughts on things. That feedback also gets shared with the board. So I think it's another important way to contribute. And that survey online that you mentioned will be open. We usually do that through the district visit day, so we'll probably close it on the 22nd so that we have time to compile that information. But we try to leave it open through that day because that usually generates a little extra activity.
So Dr. Hoagie, not to interrupt, but would you make sure that that date gets out in our communications this week? I just don't want folks to try to go on the survey and go, I didn't get it in there in time, I didn't know when it closed. Yes. So thank you.
Yeah, you are welcome. Okay, did that answer all the questions about the interview schedule?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, well, we're zipping right along here. Okay, we're gonna look at the interview question document next, which should be the next thing in your file there. And after this, we just have one other thing we're gonna throw at you, so. As you can see, when you look at the list of interview questions, we did narrow it down, so good job, all right? But we still do have a little way to go. And so what I'm gonna say, you can look at the questions now. You'll see that Abby has gone through and eliminated the questions that were not selected by anybody. And then behind the question in parentheses, there is a number of people who selected that question. And I was pleasantly surprised how many 3s and 4s we had, which is great. That honestly is a good thing. And I just noticed a big smudge on mine, so hopefully yours all don't have that. But anyway, for example, if you look under community, there were 4 people who liked question number 5. Under district climate, there were 4 people that liked question number 2. So we definitely have some common interests on the interview questions. So I think we still need to go through and narrow down a little bit more. I will mention when you get to the presentation section, it sounds like you must want to have a presentation question. I know at least one person said yes, they definitely wanted one. Other people selected some options, so I'm assuming that you do want to do some sort of a small presentation, like 5 minutes or less.
I would be for that. I like that idea. I said yes as well.
Yes.
Other consensus.
Okay,
Tim, are you good with that?
perfect.
Christina, yeah, that's you good. Yeah.
Okay, so,
For me, I mean,
5 minutes, it's not gonna be a 20 minutes.
we're cutting down my questions.
No.
My questions that I proposed, by the way.
I was gonna talk about that next, yeah.
Okay, 'cause I don't see.
They're on the back page.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay, so presentation, and then we'll get that back page. So presentation is a yes, I hear. And so what we usually do for that, Steve, to answer your question, kind of question, we tell them that it should be 3 to 5 minutes. And we ask them and we highlight and bold in the email to them to say, you need to stay within this limit. So hopefully that happens, and if it doesn't, then you take that into consideration when you're deciding who to hire, if they can follow instructions and whatnot. And I'm sure it'll be really good information. It's probably really hard to stay at 5 minutes or less, but at the same time, you know, it should be a question that can allow that. So as you look, you know, at any one of those 3 that are under presentation, I think they could make that happen. And honestly, too, question number 3, how would you create a smooth transition into the district? If you'd like to still ask that question or have them maybe just bring you a transition document, they could spend 5 minutes just going through the document they're bringing for you and then leave the document with you. So that's a nice way to do a presentation too, because then you're getting a transition plan from them. And also you're able to have them articulate that to you in the presentation. So kind of something that some districts have done before. So you will see on the back page, we had just, you know, one person that had some questions that they wanted added. Those are all listed there on the back page. There were a few questions that the wording is changed just a little bit from what you submitted because, you know, I did think it was important on some of these. We just were not sure on the legality of some of those questions. So I did refer that to Allison, and she asked your school attorney about it because, first of all, I can't call your school attorney, but I felt like they need to be the ones to okay those questions. So there were some minor changes to 2, 3, and 4, and the rest of the questions are on there as you submitted. So I would say these are also in the running then as board members look at these. I think what I want to have you do is probably another round like we just did. I don't think it's going to pay for us to sit here for an hour or 2 to talk about every single one of these questions. I think we need to go back through, look them over, indicate which ones you want to see in the final round. And at some point, we may have to just look at those that get 3, 4, 5 people to like them and move forward with those. And remembering too, the leadership profile, you want to make sure that you look at the leadership profile. And, you know, not to say that those aren't important questions. There's a lot of questions in here I want you to consider. You know, are those questions that are going to get you answers to somebody you want to be basically your CEO of the school or managing your school? A lot of things that that the board does, you're the one who votes on and creates policy. And so some of this stuff is driven through policy as well. So we want to make sure that the 20 questions that you do ask, that those 20 questions are related back to a lot of those things on the profile that we've looked at and that we've created, and also that they are questions that are, you know, what you would expect out of a CEO or somebody that's going to be that kind of business leader, manager of your school. So anyway, I think that would be what we would probably want to do next, is do another round like we did. I can email back out the template tomorrow so that you have it fresh. how you got the information back to us this time was perfect. I know somebody texted it to us, a picture, however you want to do it is fine.
Do you
So,
want to go ahead, sorry. So sorry. Are
Here
you
first.
Narrowing this down for us then to like the top? Is that what you said?
so this is condensed already.
Oh, okay.
We went through it once, so Abby marked and we took out all the ones that were not selected by anybody.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
And at this point, then, now it's up to the board to decide where do we go from here. So we still have quite a lot. We want to end up, like I said, 20 questions is usually what you have about time for. Maybe a little bit more than that, but
You've got a lot to get rid of.
you got a lot to get rid of. And so it would be easy to look and just say, well, let's just get rid of all the ones. But we'll go through one more round. What will happen then is I will actually look at the leadership profile. I'll embed questions underneath each section of your leadership profile that relate back to the bullets that were in that section to kind of show you, okay, you have like 20 questions about budget and only 10 about student achievement. So what can we cut some things out here? So anyway, that's where we'll go from here. And then at that point, we'll have to make some final decisions at the next meeting. And so.
So when do you want this, once you send that out?
Well, you know, we don't meet again until the 1st, but it would be nice to know probably next week sometime how many we still have left, so we know if we've got to do some more work. So if you can get them to us by next Monday, you know, that way you have this weekend, if you need the weekend to do it, that would be fine. Monday.
And do you want us to just denote 20, and do they all have to be, do we have to pick some from each category?
You do not. So let's just say school law. You don't have to have a question about school law at all. I know you probably want one of those, but, you know, if there's a section that maybe you have 3 in, maybe one section that you don't necessarily care for any of them, that's fine. If each board member can try and pick around 20, that would be a great start. If you still want to try and pick one from each section, you can. It's really up to you which ones you like, which ones you want to pick.
So you're still gonna send us something and then we're gonna reply?
I'll email you tomorrow just so that you have that template again, that you can mark, I liked 1 and 3 or 2, you know, and then you can just fill it out however you want or respond however you want.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions about the interview questions? Okay, all right.
Can I ask one more question?
You can, yes.
On the stakeholders and their questions, remind me how that works then.
Mhm. So we have packets that are specific to each group.
Okay. Will some of their questions be similar to ours, or are they really different?
They are pretty different, other than
Okay.
there's usually some questions about how are you going to be involved in the community? That might be a question that, you know, somebody in one of your teams might want to ask, or how are you going to support administrators in the school buildings? Or how would you create a positive working relationship with staff? There might be a question or 2 like that, you know. As you look through the questions again, think about that too, you know, maybe another group might ask that. So there could be some overlap. And certainly once I get the final questions from those committees, it won't be until, of course, probably close to Monday, the 6th, because we're not meeting till the 1st. They've got to get together and select questions, get them to me. I can certainly provide the board with those questions. Yes,
Great.
they have a much smaller packet than you do.
Yeah.
And they'll probably knock it out in about 15, 30 minutes. So, yeah,
Thank you for that.
you're welcome.
I'm sure you covered that. I just missed
It's okay.
exactly how that was going.
It's okay, you guys have had a long night.
No worries. Did we decide then on a final number? You're saying 20, I think when we talked before, it could be 24, or we settling on 20, is that what we're doing?
We're shooting for 20, but if you have a few stragglers, we're not gonna be.
Well, I mean, I
Yeah.
just like that last list that's on the back of the page, I just wanna make sure that. All right.
We won't forget to look at your last page.
It's on there. I told you I would include them, and I
I
did.
appreciate that. I did go back and review those through Allison, sent me those too.
Oh, good.
To rewrite, so I appreciate that.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, we always include questions that are, you know, suggested by board members, so, but it's up to you guys from here, but yeah, we include those, and like I said, there was just a couple that I wasn't sure about, so I thought it would be best for your school council to look at them.
Sure.
So is everybody comfortable with if we have 3, 4, 5 votes, we're really gonna focus on that list? But if there are clearly questions that have 5, then those would take priority and then we'll go down.
Yep, I think that would be a great way to do it, because at some point, we just have to decide what we're gonna ask. I should say, you should need to decide what you're going to ask, because I'm not gonna be asking anything, I'm gonna be sitting in the back of the room. So, but yes, at some point, we're gonna have to make a cutoff point or a decision about what we're gonna ask.
So what I would assume is we're gonna go back, rank all these, and then we're gonna get a list of this same exact list with the ranking, so no questions removed. Right?
We can, yeah, I can do it that way. Usually,
I would prefer it that way, just so that way we can see what everything is and
I guess,
drop them off.
if there are questions that nobody selects, normally we would remove those off. But if you would like us to bring you the list of still all the questions and just nothing behind them, if they're not selected by anybody, we could do that.
Or put a 0, which is fine.
Yeah.
Right? That way we can just see what the final list is and we can go down through it and
You
make
bet.
a decision, right?
Sure.
You guys good with that?
I think at our next meeting, we're hoping to narrow down the candidates, correct? So I just want to make sure we have time.
Yes.
And to me, it made sense to, okay, before we know who we're interviewing, let's make sure we figure out the questions, right?
Right.
Because then it may not appear fair if
Right.
we know who we're
So-
interviewing and then we make up the questions later. So I would just prefer we have some sort of method to the madness of picking the questions before, as
Okay.
opposed to going back through and voting on each one. I mean, just for interest of time, I mean, if we're voting,
Well, we can look at the top 20, right? And just look at the top 20
Yeah,
questions. I'm
of
just saying,
course.
I want to see what the
Right,
transparency.
yes.
of the-
So what I'll plan on doing then, Steve, if this works, is I'll bring you exactly this document, but I will put behind it
With a new number of votes.
0, 1, 2, whatever. Then I'll make another list of your top 20.
perfect,
That's fine.
because it might be cumbersome to look at
Right.
bunches of those.
No, that
Yeah.
sounds great.
So there'll be two interview question documents. One will be this exact thing with different numbers behind it, and it'll say round 3 instead of round 2, so we can identify it. And then a second list that would be the top 20 questions.
You guys okay with that?
Yep.
Ken, Jerry?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're only voting for 20 questions each. We're not all.
I
voting
think
for
that would
40
be-
to try and get to our number, right?
I think we should.
I think so too.
20.
Everybody gets 20 questions to pick and.
And we'll see how close they are, yep. So then, what we'll do, Allison, is at the next meeting, we will be going into closed session fairly soon, once that meeting starts on the 1st, because we'll be talking about the applicants in closed session. But if you would like to look at the interview questions, first, like right away to just say, here's the list, we could do that before you go into closed session, because I know you wanted to make sure we had the questions.
I didn't want it to be with catering questions to certain candidates.
To
So to me, it
candidates.
seemed more neutral to say,
I would
here's what
agree.
we agree on asking everybody
Yep.
before we know who those people are.
Yep.
So,
That's fair.
And then do we know, did you say how many applicants we have today, or is that something we can say or not?
We didn't say yet. So at this point, you have one applicant, which is great. There are a handful I know of that are very interested in working on the materials, so I think we'll be fine. But yeah, it usually
Usually
would.
reply at the end, right, is what you told us.
This is what always happens. I've learned not to lose sleep until I have to lose sleep. So, but right now, things look good. Like I said, I'm communicating with people and I know there's people interested. I still need to reach out to a few people too, so, yeah, things are looking pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Can I answer any other questions for you before we look at this last document? Yes. Okay. So the last thing, and really, it's not something that you need to worry too much about because I'm sure you have people in the office that are going to take care of this, but it's the Superintendent Pay Transparency Act. I just want to remind board members that this is something that you need to be aware of, that usually when you give your superintendent an increase in pay, you have to let the public know about that ahead of time so that they can contact you if they have concerns about that. But the new contract or future contracts, you don't necessarily have to do anything ahead of time. So let's say on the 8th, you want to contact somebody and negotiate for the position. You don't have to put that information out to the public before you contact them and do that negotiation. So I just wanted to make sure you kind of knew how that process will unfold once you get to that kind of finish line.
And why is that there was no communication before? And I'm sure there's some logic to why that is,
Well,
but is that
because-
because you don't know what the person's gonna accept and you're still trying to?
You're exactly right, because you're negotiating. And so as you may offer them a certain wage or base salary, and they may come back and say, well, I wanted this much, and you may say no, or you may say, yes, that's fine, we can do that. Because you'll probably have a range that you're going to be looking at. I've actually had some questions from some potential applicants about, do we know where the pay is gonna be? And that's just not something that I usually, it's not my decision. So, they will, obviously, they know all that information is public and they're looking at it anyway. But it's just because of the negotiations process that you don't have to put that out there before you offer it to somebody. So anyway, so this document just kind of talks about that a little bit, and then it does need to be published on your website within a few days of taking action on that. And then also August 1st, it has to be on the NDE website, which again, somebody at your office will, I'm sure, take care of that. But I just want to make sure as board members that you're aware that there is such a thing called the Transparency Act, and you maybe knew about it already, but for those of you that are new, I didn't know for sure if you had heard of it, so. All right, one other question, contract. Have you started to talk about a contract?
Yes, I have contacted district council, so we're working on that.
Okay. Does your contract currently have a residency clause? Do you know?
Well, I've looked at that piece.
Okay.
He's always lived here, so it's never
Right.
really thought about
Okay.
it. but-
I just didn't know if that was something that you might want to think about. I don't know some of these applicants, if they're going to be from nearby but not in the district, if then you are going to request them to move into the district, and whether or not that would be part of the contract or just a verbal agreement. Something you might want to start thinking about, just because I know there probably are administrators that live fairly close that might be interested. So it might be a topic that comes up. At this point, it hasn't yet, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Do you want feedback from us now? Would that be helpful?
You can think about it, or you can talk about it now quick if you
I
want.
feel that we're gonna be here, they gotta be here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We're so close to some other districts. I see what you're saying. It's not like you're central Nebraska where there is another district for miles and,
Right.
And so I see what you're saying. If they lived in Elkhorn, would that matter to us? I mean, I hate to limit the pool, but my preference would be that they live in the district.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's not necessarily a deal breaker, but I think they should live in, that's where I'm leaning towards event initially. And
Thoughts? Anybody else want to think about it?
I was just looking at trying to find the existing contract to see if we have that in there, but I just have the amended contract.
Yeah, and I think about the neighborhoods, that are our neighborhoods that you may live, for instance, Pine Creek. You may
Or Stone
live-
Creek, you live across the
Right.
street and you're in OPS versus Bennington, it's hard.
Yeah.
Or, maybe this water.
So
So I get back to you on that. I think initial feedback is
it
preference for
doesn't,
the district, but.
and I don't need an answer right now. In fact, I don't really need an answer at all until you look over the applications, but I just anticipate it might be something that comes up, and I would say that typically, it's very typical for your superintendent to live in your district because they should pay taxes where everybody else is paying taxes. So anyway, but again, I like Jeremy's philosophy, and it's maybe not going to be an absolute. Maybe there would be something that you would consider, don't draw a line in the sand kind of a thing, but also it is pretty important.
Could it be part of the negotiation piece and not part of the, not part of the beginning of our conversation, but at the tail end of our conversation, that's part of the negotiations?
I think so. I would agree with you.
Yeah, there could be some circumstances that would, that we may not even think about, that would cause them not to be able to do that. For instance, spouse, that they have to be so close to a hospital, or I'm just thinking of things like that maybe we wouldn't think of, right? That would limit them.
Well, I would think if they want to be superintendent here, if they have to have kids, they sure want to be the have their kids in our school district
You could-
also.
yeah,
And I'm
you
not
would
gonna
think
option
so.
them in.
And that's another,
Unless they're senior high school.
I don't know.
that is another thing though that is definitely to be considered is if they do have a family, that those children may come here to school and so, yeah. Well, we can kind of tackle that. Usually that's a question when we initially get their application. We will contact them and just ask them a few questions. And one of the questions is whether or not they are planning to relocate if they're offered the position. So we may even have that information as you review applications that we can share with you. Sometimes people will even say, hey, I'm definitely interested, but I want you to know, I can't relocate till next year because of this or that. And so whatever information we can provide the board, and then that's really up to you all, how you want to proceed. But I just thought I'd throw it out there so you could start thinking about it. Okay, well, that is everything I have written down on my list for tonight. So like I said, we'll email you tomorrow that template. And if you have any questions, anybody has a question for us, I'm sure you can find my number just about everywhere. So go ahead and give us a call, but otherwise we'll plan on seeing you on the 1st. And if there's anything that comes up before then, I'll visit with Allison and we'll be able to communicate with you. But other than that, we're just gonna keep moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
You are welcome.
Have a safe drive.
Thank you.
I think that's the last on our agenda, so we probably need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Jody always wants to call roll, so I'll let you call roll.
Christie?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Thank you.
She got on the last one.